In Hollywood, few names shine as brightly as Meryl Streep's. For decades, she has been hailed as the greatest actress of her generation, collecting awards, commanding the screen, and captivating audiences around the world. But behind the applause and the spotlight lies a hidden story, one that even her most devoted fans have never fully known. At 76 years old, Meryl has finally spoken about the man who, in her words, was the great love of her life, Robert. This is not a tale of red carpets or glamorous premieres. It is a story of passion, heartbreak, and a love so powerful it shaped Meryl into the woman she is today. For years, she kept this truth locked away, too painful to share, too sacred to expose. But now, with time and reflection, she has revealed the heartbreaking truth. And the reality is far more tragic and far more beautiful than anyone ever imagined. The story begins long before the Academy Awards, before the global fame, and before Meryl Streep became a household name. In the early 1970s, she was simply a young actress struggling to make her mark on the New York stage. She was talented, extraordinarily so, but the theater world was brutal. Rejections came often, money was scarce, and success seemed uncertain. It was during these years of struggle that Meryl met Robert. He was a fellow actor, passionate, intense, and deeply committed to his craft. From the very beginning, their connection was undeniable. This was not just a romance. It was a meeting of two kindred spirits. They shared the same hunger for art, the same sleepless nights memorizing lines, and the same dream of one day making their names known in the unforgiving world of acting. Together, they were unstoppable. Robert encouraged Meryl to embrace her talent fully, reminding her of the brilliance she carried even when she doubted herself. For Meryl, his belief in her meant everything. He was not just her partner. He was her anchor. Friends would later recall how magnetic they were together. A couple united not only by love, but by creativity, ambition, and a deep respect for each other's gifts. By the mid-1970s, Meryl's career began to take off. Her role in The Deer Hunter would catapult her into stardom, instantly marking her as one of the most gifted actresses of her generation. But with success came pressure. Hollywood was demanding, competitive, and often ruthless. Robert, still finding his footing, could not escape the shadow of Meryl's rapid rise. The imbalance between them grew quietly, unspoken but deeply felt. And yet, through it all, Meryl remained devoted to him. Robert was the person who kept her grounded as her life began to change at lightning speed. He was the one constant, the reminder of who she was before the fame and the chaos. In interviews years later, Meryl would hint that much of her strength in those early years came from Robert's love and belief in her. Their romance seemed destined to last forever, a love story written in the stars. But as fate would soon prove, even the most powerful love is not immune to tragedy. Just as Meryl and Robert's future together seemed full of promise, life dealt them a devastating blow. Robert fell gravely ill. At first, the symptoms seemed minor: exhaustion, discomfort, things that could easily be dismissed in the busy lives of young actors. But the diagnosis that followed was nothing short of catastrophic. Robert was battling cancer. For Meryl, the news was shattering. She was only beginning to find her place in Hollywood, but none of that mattered compared to Robert's health. Her priorities shifted overnight. Roles, auditions, and professional opportunities suddenly took a back seat. What consumed her was not the pursuit of fame, but the fight to save the man she loved. Those who knew her at the time remember how fiercely loyal she became. She sat by Robert's side through hospital visits, treatments, and long, painful nights. She read to him, held his hand, and tried to bring light into the darkest of moments. Even as her career began to accelerate, she refused to leave his side, determined to be present for every step of his battle. But the disease was relentless. Each passing week chipped away at the dreams they had built together. Their late-night conversations about the future slowly transformed into hushed exchanges about pain, survival, and unspoken fears. Meryl's friends and colleagues would later say that the depth of grief she carried during this time became a well of emotion she would draw upon throughout her career. When Robert's health declined further, Meryl faced an unbearable reality. She was watching the man she loved fade away, powerless to stop it. The pain was not only emotional, but transformative. Robert's illness forced her into a kind of maturity few people her age could comprehend. She was learning about loss in the most intimate, devastating way possible. Eventually, the inevitable came. Robert passed away, leaving Meryl heartbroken. The loss was so profound that she later admitted it felt like her own life had ended with his. His death did not just leave a void in her personal world, it reshaped her as an artist, giving her performances a rawness and vulnerability that critics would hail for decades. Some of her most iconic roles, particularly in Kramer vs. Kramer and Sophie's Choice, carried the unmistakable weight of that heartbreak. It was as though every ounce of grief, every silent tear shed at Robert's bedside, found its way into her work. This was not acting in the conventional sense. It was lived experience, translated into art. Robert's death interrupted more than a love story. It changed the very course of Meryl's life, and though she would eventually move forward, build a family, and achieve unparalleled success, the memory of Robert and the love they shared never left her. For the public, Meryl Streep was becoming a legend. But privately, she was still a young woman grieving the loss of the man she once believed she would spend forever with. In the years that followed Robert's passing, Meryl Streep's career soared to unimaginable heights. She became the actress that Hollywood and the world could not stop talking about. From Kramer vs. Kramer to Sophie's Choice, from Out of Africa to The Devil Wears Prada, her name became synonymous with brilliance. Yet, behind all the accolades and applause, Meryl carried a silence so heavy it was almost invisible. Robert's memory remained with her, but she rarely spoke about him. In interviews, she was careful, often sidestepping questions that came too close to her private pain. This wasn't because she wanted to forget. It was because the love they shared was too sacred, too delicate to hand over to tabloids and headlines. Hollywood thrives on gossip and spectacle, but Meryl refused to let Robert's story be reduced to entertainment. Her silence created a certain mystique. Fans and journalists speculated about the depth of their relationship, whispering about how his passing may have shaped her most powerful performances. Some critics even suggested that Meryl's unmatched ability to convey heartbreak came from this personal tragedy, though she never confirmed it. For decades, she kept that part of her heart locked away, sharing it only with those closest to her. Privately, however, Robert was never far from her thoughts. Friends recalled that she kept mementos, photographs, handwritten letters, cherished keepsakes from their time together. When she spoke of him in private moments, her voice softened, her eyes turned distant, as though she was momentarily transported back to those brief, golden years when they had dreamed of a lifetime together. For Meryl, silence was a form of respect. It was her way of protecting the memory of the man she loved. In a world where so much is consumed, dissected, and spun for public curiosity, she chose to keep Robert for herself. That silence was not about hiding, it was about honoring, and yet the echoes of that love continued to shape her work. Many who watched her on screen sensed a depth of emotion that felt almost too real. They were right. Every tear, every flicker of sorrow, every portrayal of a woman facing unimaginable loss carried a trace of Robert's absence. As the years passed, Meryl built a new life. She married, raised children, and found joy again. But even then, the story of Robert remained part of her. It was a private chapter she never closed, even as the rest of the world moved on. For decades, audiences only saw the legend. What they didn't see was the woman who had loved and lost so deeply, carrying that silence as both a burden and a gift. And while Meryl never let the world in on the full truth, those closest to her always knew. Robert had changed her forever. Time has a way of softening even the deepest wounds, but some loves never truly fade. For decades, Meryl Streep carried Robert's memory quietly, tucked away from the world's gaze. But now, at 76, she has finally broken that silence. In a rare and candid moment, she confessed what so many had long suspected. Robert was, and always would be, the love of her life. Her words were not bitter, nor were they filled with regret. Instead, they carried a quiet honesty, the kind that only comes with age and reflection. Meryl explained that Robert's love shaped her, gave her courage, and pushed her toward the greatness she eventually achieved. Though their time together was tragically cut short, his presence never truly left her. She admitted that every role she played, every woman she brought to life on screen, held a trace of Robert. The vulnerability, the strength, the heartbreak her performances conveyed so powerfully often drew from the well of grief and love she carried for him. In her own words, "Robert is still with me in everything I do." This confession struck a chord not just with her fans, but with anyone who has ever lost someone too soon. It reminded the world that even icons, no matter how untouchable they may appear, carry wounds that never fully heal. For Meryl, opening up was not about looking back with sorrow, but about honoring the love that defined her youth and influenced the woman she became. By sharing the truth at 76, Meryl revealed a story that was both tragic and beautiful. Robert may not have lived to see her become a global legend, but in many ways he was part of every success she achieved. His faith in her, his love, and even his loss were woven into the fabric of her legacy. Fans were moved by her words, not only because they revealed a hidden chapter of her life, but because they humanized her. Behind the awards, the acclaim, and the carefully crafted performances, there was a woman who had loved deeply and lost painfully, and who carried that truth with her through every stage of her remarkable career. For Meryl Streep, confessing this was not about reopening old wounds. It was about finally giving voice to the love she had kept guarded for so long. And in doing so, she reminded the world of something universal. True love, even when interrupted by tragedy, never dies. It lives on in memory, in art, and in the heart of the one left behind. At 76, her words offered closure, not just for herself, but for everyone who has followed her journey. Robert may have been gone for decades, but to Meryl he was always there, always loved and always remembered.